One of our Sojourn students is going to share her journey with you. Please give a warm welcome for Micah Smith.
Good evening, everyone. I am so honored to introduce our keynote speaker for tonight, Mr. Jerry Mitchell. Mr. Jerry Mitchell is an investigative reporter with the Clarion Ledger in Jackson, Mississippi. His work has helped put 4 Klansmen behind bars. First, Byron Daylight Beckwith for the 1963 assassination of NAACP leader Medgar Evers. Second, Imperial Wizard Sam Bowers for ordering the fatal firebombing of NAACP leader Vernon Dahmer in 1966. Third, Bobby Cherry for the 1963 bombing of a Birmingham church that killed 4 little girls. And lastly, Edgar Ray Killing for helping organize the June 21st, 1964 killings of James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Mickey Schwerner. He is portrayed by Jerry Levine in the film Ghosts of Mississippi, about the murder of Medgar Evers and the belated efforts to bring killer Byron Daylight Beckwith to justice. I met Jerry Mitchell in 2012 when I participated in Sojourn to the Past, the civil rights sites in the South. I learned from him history that has been left out of our history books. He told us about the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission, which was composed of elected officers, policemen, lawyers, and was directed to spy on civil rights workers. They then gave directives to the Ku Klux Klan. The records of the Sovereignty Commission were sealed until 2017, 50 years after the commission was abolished. Someone leaked some of the files to Mr. Mitchell, and he began to want more. And as he says, that is what started the journey for me. He has won more than 20 national awards. In 2009, he received the MacArthur Genius Grant, only the second investigative reporter to receive the $500,000 award. In 2005, he became the youngest recipient of Columbia University's John Chancellor Award for Excellence in Journalism. He has been profiled by Nightline, USA Today, the New York Times, American Journalism Review, and many others. According to National Public Radio, he is one of only 2 investigative reporters still looking into cold cases from the civil rights era in the South. Mr. Mitchell received a Bachelor's of Arts degree in journalism from Harding University and a master's degree from the Ohio State University. Don't think that all his work has been without danger. He has received threatening letters, phone calls, and even face-to-face threats. But he has willingly put his life on the line in the pursuit of justice. Please stand to your feet and help me welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Jerry Mitchell.
Thank y'all. I hope I can say y'all. Otherwise, I'm in trouble. I think it's only appropriate as this nation kind of is struggling now with violence and race that we should come together and embrace Martin Luther King's principles of nonviolence. The nation needs this message. And I just want to thank you, Youngstown and Penny Wells and so many others, Sojourn students who came up with the idea, and it's just a wonderful idea. And I would like to see, obviously Ohio has embraced it, but I would love to see the nation embrace it and have a week of nonviolence for this country. So I think it's a wonderful thing. And I just feel so humbled and honored to be here. Mr. Booker, it's just such an honor to be here with you, and you have just brought such incredible honor to my profession in journalism, and what you have done. You have changed this nation. You really have, and we just honor and thank you again for what you've done. And we want to thank Judge Jones. I mean, wow. Martin Luther King once said, and he was talking about the South, but I think it's true of the nation as well, that one day the South would recognize its true heroes. And so I want to honor Judge Jones as well, and just thank him for what he's done as well, and just want to give him a round of applause. And finally, Minnie Jean, I love you. Thank you for your courage and your humor. I mean, God bless you. You always make me laugh. You're great. I love you. She has been on, 80-something Sojourn trips, so that's amazing. But, I think, but I want to talk to you tonight is I'm a Southerner. All we do is tell stories, so that's what I'm going to do. This is the FBI poster, the reward poster that went out when the 3 civil rights workers, they were officially missing from the first day of summer on in the summer of 1964 in Mississippi. They were in Neshoba County and were jailed and then released, and then unbeknownst to anybody else at this point in time, the Klan intercepted them and took them out and killed them, and very brutally, and buried their bodies in a dam. And so it's literally 44 days that the nation kind of watched this drama in play. But this is the reward poster, and I just want to mention them by name. Andy Goodman is on the left. This is James Chaney in the middle, and Mickey Schwerner. And Andy and Mickey were both from New York City, but James Chaney was from Meridian, Mississippi. In fact, earlier today, one of the friends of James Chaney, her dad was friends with James Chaney, but he was from Meridian, Mississippi, which is in East Mississippi, almost the Alabama line. And not too long ago, I went and visited his grave, and he lives. The grave is up on a hill, and I walked up the hill and got to the top of the hill. On the face of the grave, it says, "There are those who are alive, yet will never live. Those who are dead, yet will live forever. Great deeds inspire and encourage living." And so I kind of want to tell you about some people who've inspired me, people such as Medgar Evers. Medgar Evers lied about his age so he could go fight in World War II, fought in Normandy, fought the Nazis, and came home to fight racism all over again in the form of Jim Crow that barred African Americans from voting booths, restaurants, even restrooms. In fact, one of the early campaigns that Medgar Evers was involved with, they had bumper stickers. I love this. That bumper sticker says, "Don't buy gas where you can't use the restroom." And that was one of the, and so sometimes people say the civil rights movement began in 1954. No, it began far before that. And so he was one of the ones involved in that. And so he tried to go to Ole Miss. They wouldn't let him, tried to go to law school. They barred him from that. And the NAACP was considering taking a lawsuit on his behalf to court, but they were so impressed with him, they hired him to be field secretary for Mississippi. And so he became the field secretary, field secretary for Mississippi NAACP. And he went around the state, he investigated cases like the Emmett Till case and many others around the state that weren't being prosecuted, that weren't being pursued in any way. And unfortunately, on the same night that President Kennedy told the nation the grandsons of slaves were still not free, he was shot in the back in his own driveway. And Myrlie Evers, his widow and his children, rushed outside, saw the blood, screamed. 27 years later, I was visiting with his killer. This is his assassin. This is Byron D. LeBeckwith. And I came because I was obsessed. Mississippi, as was mentioned in the introduction, had this spy agency, segregation spy agency called the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission. It was basically would infiltrate civil rights groups. They would and also put propaganda up north about, you know, how much everyone was so happy with Jim Crow and all that other kind of stuff, you know. But anyway, so all these records for the Sovereignty Commission, Mississippi legislature voted to seal for 50 years. And when I found that out, I thought, there's like 132,000 pages of records. When I found that, I was like, well, there's got to be something in there, or they wouldn't be sealing them for 50 years, right? And so I was able to get some of those records. What they showed was the same time the state of Mississippi was prosecuting this man, Byron D. LeBeckwith, for the killing of Medgar Evers, this Sovereignty Commission, which was headed by the governor, was assisting the defense trying to get him acquitted, and nobody knew that. And so my story ran October 1st, 1989. At the time that my story ran, the odds were literally more than 1,000,000 to 1. There was nothing in the court file of any kind of value, no evidence, no murder weapon, no court transcript. But Myrlie Evers, the widow of Medgar Evers, believed, and she prayed, and some amazing things happened. A couple of months later, Jackson police are cleaning out a closet and happened to find a box that contained the crime scene photographs of the killing of Medgar Evers, including the fingerprint of Byron D. LeBeckwith lifted from the murder weapon. A couple of months after that, the Myrlie Evers shared with me her copy of the court transcript that she had saved in the safety deposit box. And a few months after that, the prosecutor in the case found the murder weapon in his father-in-law's closet, which sounds like I'm making it up. This is why I like nonfiction. So I went to visit, as I mentioned, Byron D. LeBeckwith, and we spent this was April of 1990, we spent about 6 hours talking, and who's absolutely the most racist person I ever spent any serious time with. I mean, just N-word this, N-word that, and then he started in other minorities, and he was very anti-Semitic as well. And so, I felt like I needed a bath, and so it's starting to get dark, and, Signal Mountain's a beautiful place when it's getting dark, but not so much when you're with Byron D. LeBeckwith. So he insisted on walking me out to the car. And I'm like, really? That's okay. I think I can find my way. So he gets me out to the car anyway, and he walks me out there and says, if you write positive things about white Caucasian Christians, God will bless you. If you write negative things about white Caucasian Christians, God will punish you. If God does not punish you directly, several individuals will do it for him. And so his wife had made me a sandwich. I think you can guess what I did with the sandwich. So Byron D. LeBeckwith was indicted for the murder of Medgar Evers in December of 1990, months later after I talked with him. And so he fought extradition from Tennessee back to Mississippi. He lost that fight, winds up in the courtroom. When I went to interview him, he didn't realize that I was the one that wrote the story that got the case reopened. By now, he'd figured that out. And so he saw me across the courtroom. He goes, see that boy over there? When he dies, he's going to Africa. I turned to my friend Ed and went, I've always wanted to go to Africa. Byron D. LeBeckwith was convicted on February 5th, 1994, on almost the exact anniversary of when he was tried 30 years earlier in the same courtroom. And when the word guilty rang out, you could hear the waves of joy cascading down the hall till it reached a foyer full of people, black and white, erupted in cheers. And I just felt chills because what was impossible was suddenly possible. And how many other killings there were like this that went unpunished. And Merle Evers and her daughter, Rena, cheered as well. Not too long after Beckwith was indicted, I met with this woman. Her name is Ellie Damer. And her husband, late husband, is named Vernon Damer. Vernon Damer was a businessman, farmer, entrepreneur. He had a little grocery store, a planing mill, sawmill. He just kind of did a little bit of everything. They had property, they grew cotton, all sorts of things, soybeans, you name it. And so he was a very brave man. He got involved with the NAACP right after World War II, which in Mississippi was pretty much, like a death sentence if they found out. But he stayed with it. He was very dedicated to voting rights. The Klan didn't like that. Attacked him and his family in the middle of the night, January 10th, 1966. Very cold night. About 2 o'clock in the morning. Attacked him and his family, set the house on fire, began firing their guns into the house, and Vernon Damer woke up, grabbed his shotgun, ran to the front of the house, began firing back at the Klansmen so his family could escape safely out a back window. Unfortunately, the flames of the fire seared his lungs, and he died later that day. A few weeks later in the mail came his voter registration card. He had fought his whole life for the right of all Americans to be able to vote, but never been able to cast a ballot himself. And this is what he had, by the way, at the same time he was killed, 4 sons in the military. In fact, he had 6 of his 7 sons served in the military, a total of 72 years. So when they came home, this is what the sons found. The guy who ordered this was this man, Sam Bowers. He was the head of the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan in Mississippi, the most violent Klan organization in the United States, responsible for at least 10 killings that we know of in Mississippi, probably more. Bowers had ordered this killing, never been convicted. After I met with Mrs. Damer and the family. After that, they met with the district attorney. He acted interested, but over time, pretty much got cold feet. Wouldn't do the case. And then he went out of office. Another guy came in. He expressed no interest in the case. So I'd pretty much almost given up on the case, and I got an offer to go to grad school here in Ohio. So I was literally in Ohio when I got this phone call in spring of 1997. This guy said he wanted to talk to me. He wouldn't give me his name, but said information on the Damer case. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I flew back to Mississippi, and it was me and the guy and a buddy of his and 2 sons of Vernon Damer, and I think I was the only one there who didn't have a gun. But anyway, we met and we talked, and it turned out this guy had worked for Sam Bowers as a kid, and he had overheard Sam Bowers give the orders to kill Vernon Damer. So he came forward. He met with us, obviously, then he met with the district attorney. They reopened the case in earnest. The guy who was the key witness back in the 1960s was this man. His name is Billy Rapitz. Billy Rapitz was involved in the killing, dropped his gun, got caught, pleaded guilty to murder, got a life sentence for that. Pleaded guilty to federal charges, got 5 years for that. So I was kind of doing research on how much time these guys actually did. There were like 3 or 4 people convicted, but it was kind of a joke. The governor of Mississippi either pardoned them, put them out on work release, you name it. They did it all, to get these guys out. So I was trying to catalog how much actual time any of these guys did. So I got to him, and there wasn't any record of the state time, but what I was told was he had gone to the Federal Witness Protection Program. So I called Federal Bureau of Prisons, and I was talking to an archivist there who dug up his old file, was kind enough to do that, and we're kind of going through it. Now, how much time did he serve? And the woman said, archivist said, well, 3.5 years. And I said, now I understand that he left federal prison and went into the witness protection program, and the woman said, that's impossible. Impossible? What are you talking about? There was no federal witness protection program. So what this meant was Billy Roy Pitts had never served a single day of his life sentence in Mississippi. Kind of a big oversight, right? So, but I had no idea if Billy Roy Pitts was alive, he's dead, where he was, and this was the relatively early days of the internet. So I got on the internet, and there was a website that had where you didn't have to put in the city or the state like every other site. So I went on the website, typed in Billy Roy Pitts, and up it popped. Had his address. Denham Springs, Louisiana, has telephone number. So I called him. First 20 minutes of the conversation went like this. How'd you find me? How'd you find me? I'm like, it's on the internet. The internet, I listed a telephone number. Like, I guess you have to take it up with them. Anyway, so as a result of my story, Mississippi authorities issued a warrant for his arrest. He didn't like that. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he didn't like that arrest warrant. In fact, he ran. So while he was on the run, believe it or not, he mailed me an audio cassette. And I got it and I played it, and this is how it began. Jerry, I just want you to know you've ruined my life. But I promise if I talk to anybody, I'd talk to you. So here's his tape, and on this tape he proceeds to tell me all of his involvement in killing Vernon Damer, all of his involvement in all this other Klan violence. So shortly after this, he turns himself into authorities, and this now leads to the arrest of Sam Bowers. And also his right-hand guy, his right-hand guy's name was Devers Nix, and he was the head of, and I swear I'm not making this up, the Klan Bureau of Investigation. So when his family brought him in, it was like the most pitiful sight you've ever seen in your life. They wheel him in the wheelchair. He's got the green oxygen tank you can see, and they wheel him up in front of the judge, and he's like, I can't take more than a couple steps without needing oxygen, Judge. Judge is like, well, I normally don't do this, but I'm gonna let you out without bond. A dozen days later, this is like a reporter's dream. Guess where we caught him? Playing golf. So we got pictures, obviously. So he got arrested. Yeah, he loved me. So fast forward, Sam Bowers goes on trial, and guess who's there to testify on his behalf but Devers Nix, Mr. Golfer here. And so he's talking to his lawyer before he goes up there to testify. And I know y'all are like me. You know about the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. You can claim that at any point in time, even if you're on the witness stand. And so his lawyer is trying to work out a signaling system with him on that. And this guy was a good criminal defense lawyer, but by now, he was in his 80s, and nothing wrong with that. The reason for that detail will be apparent in a minute. And so anyway, they're trying to work at this signaling system. He says, now, Devers, when you get up there, if you need to take the fifth, I'm going to raise my hand. I'll raise my hand. Devers like, okay. He was wearing the same golf cap, by the way, which was cracking me up to know. Yeah. So Devers gets up there, he starts testifying. I look back at his lawyer about 5 minutes later. You can probably guess this part. You know what his lawyer was doing? So Devers kept right on testifying. Yeah, I was in the Klan. Try to put a positive spin on it like there is one. Well, the Klan was a benevolent organization, passing out fruit baskets to the needy at Christmas. So in the cross-examination, the prosecutor got up there and asked, Mr. Nix, just how many fruit baskets did you pass out? And Devers says, oh, sad to say, none. I swear it was the funniest trial I ever covered in my life as a reporter. Deadly serious matter, but funny trial. Sam Bowers was represented by this guy on the right. His name was Travis Buckley. Travis Buckley was not just a lawyer for the Klan, he was a leader in the Klan. You got that? In fact, he was indicted at one point for Vernon Damer's fatal firebombing, okay? So he's questioning a guy questioning Billy Roy Pitts, I mentioned earlier, about this planning meeting that took place prior to the attack on Vernon Damer's family. He's asking him about that. Now, Mr. Pitts, who all was at that planning meeting? Pitts is like, let's see, I was there, Devers Nix was there. Well, you were there. And Buckley's like, objection, Your Honor. You can't make this stuff up, you know. I've covered a lot of trials in my life. It's the only trial I ever covered where a witness implicated the defense lawyer himself in the case. Sam Bowers was convicted in that case on August 21st, 1998, and given a life sentence, just like Beckwith. The next case I got involved with, just kind of accidentally, was the Birmingham church bombing case, and I'm just going to presume you know about that. If you don't know about it, go watch Spike Lee's documentary. He's got an excellent documentary on this called Four Little Girls. But the 4 girls were killed by a bomb the Klan planted in a church in downtown Birmingham. And they were using this church. The significance of the church was they were using it for staging civil rights activities, the children's marches and other things that were happening in the spring, that spring. But anyway, the bomb went off and it killed the 4 girls, these 4 girls, and sometimes forgotten is actually blinded a 5th girl, Sarah Collins. And so, but in spring of 1999, I was contacted by this man's wife, actually. I had already talked to him in 98. I was just kind of looking at what cases were being investigated, because I've done 2 of these cases. I'm thinking, what else is out there? Who else is looking at what? And I was just doing an overview kind of case. So I talked to this man. His name is Bobby Cherry. And so his wife contacted me in spring of 99 and said, Bobby wants to talk to you. I'm like, okay. And it turned out he didn't live that far from my hometown, which is kind of interesting too. I grew up in the schizophrenic town of Texarkana, Texas, and he lived near Tyler, Texas, a little place called Maybank. And so I drove over from Mississippi, met him, took him and his wife out for barbecue, because, well, I guess that's what you take Klansmen out for. I'm not really sure, but we had barbecue, we ate, and he told me, I didn't have anything to do with that church bombing. I left that sign shop. The sign shop he's talking about is like literally 2.5 blocks from the church. So I left that sign shop at 9:45 because I had to get home and watch wrestling. And he pulled out this sworn, you can't make it up, can you? Pulled out the sworn statement. Yes, I remember that night well, we're all sitting around watching wrestling. So, you know, one of the rules in journalism, and this is the way we say it in the South, even if your mama tells you she loves you, check it out. And so I checked it out and had our librarian check with the Birmingham News and see just what was in the paper as being on TV that night. And Susan emailed me the next day and said, there was no wrestling. In fact, it turned out they had been wrestling on for years. It's an alibi he made up in 1980 when the FBI reinvestigated the case. And so, anyway, he was arrested in the case. He went, and I also heard that he had something to do with the beating of Fred Shuttlesworth. And hopefully you know who Fred Shuttlesworth is. If you don't, please read about him. Incredibly brave guy. But basically Fred Shuttlesworth was beaten when he tried to enroll his 2 daughters at all-white Birmingham school in 1957. I heard Bobby Cherry had something to do with that. Time went on a little bit. In the mail one day, I get this big, thick biography of Fred Shuttlesworth. And I don't feel like me, but the first thing I do with the big, thick book, look at the pictures. So I'm flipping through, I'm looking at the pictures, and there's a picture of the beating of Fred Shuttlesworth. I'm like, I didn't know there were any pictures of it, you know? So I contacted the author and said, hey, because I was looking at the picture, it was a real distant shot, you really couldn't make anything out. So I called the author and was like, hey, there any other pictures of the beating of Fred Shuttlesworth? There's footage of it. Like, you're kidding. So he pointed me to this old CBS documentary. I was able to finally get it, played it. as it turned out, this guy had kind of a semi-estranged son who was a truck driver who would drive through Jackson once in a while. So I called him up and said, hey, would you mind coming by and looking at this? He goes, no problem. So he came by, played it for him. He's like, yep, there's Dad. And he even pointed out something I didn't see. He says, yeah, you see him reaching his front right pocket? That's where he kept his brass knuckles. And here's actually, I've got a picture of it. That's Fred Shuttlesworth on the left, and the guy with the cigarette hanging out of his mouth, Bobby Cherry. And you actually can see, this is not the video, but I'm just a snapshot of it. You can actually see him. He was the one that basically gave Fred Shuttlesworth a concussion that day. So when Bobby Cherry went on trial, they showed this footage of him beating Fred Shuttlesworth and introduced the television logs to show there was no wrestling. And he was convicted of all 4 of the girls' murders and given a life sentence, 4 life sentences. And yeah, that's worth applauding. Absolutely. Sam Bowers gave an interview. He never ever talked to the press. He gave an interview to the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, but it was sealed. So I wanted that interview and eventually got it. And in the interview, he's talking about the Mississippi burning case. He's the one that ordered the killings of Cheney, Goodman, Schwerner, okay? He was convicted of that in federal court on federal conspiracy charges. Only served 6 years for that. Nobody was charged with murder, okay? More than 20 guys involved. Nobody ever charged for murder. And I was kind of shocked by that, to be honest. So I was reading the interview, and in the interview, Bowers said he was quite delighted to be convicted in that federal court case and have the main instigator of the entire affair walk out of the courtroom a free man. And he was referring to this guy. His name is Edgar Ray Killen, or he's referred to locally, Preacher Killen. So I called Preacher Killen up, and we talked for quite a while. At some point, he said, there's some guy in Jackson just keeps stirring things up and stirring things up and stirring things up, and I just didn't have the heart to tell him it was me. So I took him and his wife out for catfish. Like feeding them Klansmen. So we went out, we ate catfish. I asked him if he had anything to do with the killing of 3 civil rights workers. He said no. I said, well, what do you think should happen to people that were responsible? He said, I'm not going to say they were wrong. And then he proceeds to tell me this story. When Martin Luther King was assassinated, obviously in 1968, the FBI at that moment in time had no idea who did it. And so they sent out agents everywhere, including his doorstep. And they were asking Preacher Killen about his whereabouts on April 4th, 1968. He refused to talk to them, but one of the agents left his card. Time goes on. One day, Preacher Killen picks up the card, calls the FBI agent, wants to know who killed King. The agent's like, why do you want to know? Killen says, man, I want to shake his hand. You know, I sometimes have people see pictures of these old guys either going to trial or footage of going to trial or being convicted and hauled away or whatever, and they'll say to me, Jerry, why don't you leave these old guys alone? And you know what I tell them? These were young killers. They just happen to get old. Edgar Ray Killen was convicted on the exact anniversary of the killings, June 21st, in 2005, and is still in prison serving a 60-year sentence. This is the bodies, in case, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but I think I have to show some of this. You know, I hate to say it, I'm not trying to shock people, but I just want people to know, in case there are younger people here that don't really know what happened. And so his hate was responsible for this, okay? Him and a lot of others. The most recent case prosecuted in Mississippi was this case. It's Henry Hezekiah D. and Charles Eddie Moore, and they were both 19 years old. They were hitchhiking, trying to get a ride back home in rural Mississippi and southwest Mississippi when this man came up. His name was James Ford Seal, who was a Klansman. And he basically pretended to be a government agent, pulled up, ordered him into his car, And they got in, but what they didn't realize is there was a whole carload of Klansmen behind them. You know, these Klansmen believed this like bogus story about gun running in the county. It was just total lie. But they believed it. So he took the two young men, teenagers, out there, and they beat them and beat them and beat them. Loaded them in the back of a Ford, drove to the Mississippi River, duct taped their mouths, tied their wrists, tied their ankles, took them one by one in a boat out to the middle of the Mississippi River and threw them in the river where they drowned. I don't know about you, but if somebody does something like that, don't they deserve to be punished? Well, no matter how long it's been, right? 10, 20, 30, 40, doesn't matter, right? James Ford Seal was convicted and received 3 life sentences in his case. So, worth applauding too. You know, it's a matter of faith with me, but I believe God's hand has been involved in these cases. And to date now, interestingly, there have been 24 convictions in these cases. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. But the hate that led to this, unfortunately, has never really gone away, has it? It wasn't that long ago, was it? In Charleston, this lovely church, that these 9 beautiful people were killed for no reason other than the color of their skin. We sometimes, and I call it hate too, but it doesn't start out that way. What it starts originally at was fear, right? And then even before that, this thing called dehumanization. Because if people feel like somebody else is less than, or they're other, or they're not one of them, then they have permission to destroy somebody, right? Either figuratively or, in many cases, literally. And that's what happened in this case. I've been, she alluded to it, I've had, dozens of death threats and things like that. And that just kind of comes with the territory if you start writing about these things. But what was interesting is it's led to a surprising gift. And the gift is the gift of living fearlessly. Living fearlessly is not about living without fear. Living fearlessly is about living beyond fear. Living fearlessly is about living for something greater than ourselves. And isn't that what you've done, Mr. Booker, and Judge Jones, and Minnie Jean, and so many others? And we thank you for that. And, but that's what it's about. It's about all of us learning to live fearlessly, living for something greater than ourselves. I mentioned the convictions, and it's been amazing to see this many convictions. But the more amazing thing has been some of the racial reconciliation. Not too long after Sam Bowers was convicted, Billy Roy Pitts testified in a hearing, and when he got done, he walked to the back of the courtroom. And when he got there, he ran into the widow, Mrs. Damer. And Billy Roy Pitts apologized to Mrs. Damer for killing her husband and asked her to forgive him. And she forgave him. And she began to cry. And he began to cry. And as I walked out of the courtroom that day, I thought about Vernon Damer and other people like him that have lived lives that matter. And I thought about that inscription on James Chaney's grave. It said, there are those who are alive, yet will never live. Those who are dead, yet will live forever. And in that moment, I realized each day we are etching our headstones. What will our headstones say? May God bless you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.